In January of 2013, Angus King was sworn in as Maine's first independent United States Senator, filling the same seat once held by storied Maine leaders Edmund Muskie, George Mitchell, and Olympia Snowe. Those are big shoes to fill. It's nice to have you, Senator. Thank you for being here.
Hey, it's great to be with you, and you're right. When I realized my lineage went back to Muskie, it was pretty daunting, I got to admit. And by the way, I have Muskie's desk in my office. That's the desk that I use.
In your office or in the well of the Senate?
No, in my office. It's the desk that he used when he wrote the Clean Water and Clean Air Act. My one of my administrative guys found it in the bowels of the Senate office building.
I love that. It's like finding the Declaration of Independence at the Lancaster State Fair. Whose desk do you have in the Senate? Or maybe I should say, who else has used your desk in the Senate?
Well, it's funny. I've looked in it, and as you know, the names are sort of scratched into it. There are none that are terribly recognizable. I didn't see Daniel Webster or Stuart Symington in there, or Lyndon Johnson, but it's pretty amazing. I don't know if you know this, Michael, but I served in the Senate as a staff member almost 50 years ago. And so to be a senator after having been a staff member is quite a sort of weird experience, because I keep expecting people to say, you can't go there. That's senators only. I sort of look over my shoulder, but it also, having had that experience was helpful. Interestingly, I was in the Senate as a staff member during Watergate and Nixon's impeachment and resignation.
What a great experience. I'm eager to chat with you about a speech that you recently delivered about the lack of lines, but a rookie question initially and then another background question. I love the fact that you're an elected independent. I look at you as more of a true independent. Bernie fashions himself as an independent, but Bernie doesn't rank, in the middle of the stack by voting records the way that you do, which I respect. You caucus with the Democrats. The rookie question is, why is it necessary to caucus with either as an independent?
Well, the short answer is because that's how you get your committee assignments. When I first came down, I thought, I'll have put my chair in the middle of the aisle and be a true independent, not caucus with either side. And then I found out that through the caucus, through the one or the other of the caucuses, that's how you get your committee assignments. And of course, as you know, that's where a hell of a lot of the work is done. So when I talked to Harry Reid, who was the majority leader at the time, the Senate majority leader, I said, look, I'm going to just do what I think is right, and if I'll caucus with you if you assure me that you'll respect my independence. And he did. I can honestly say, in I think 4 years, Harry only asked me for 2 votes. One of them I was going to vote with him anyway, and the other one I didn't. So, and it's certainly true that I vote more frequently with the Republicans, with the Democrats, particularly these days.
So, in other words, you wouldn't be precluded from committee work if you maintain that independent status, but you'd never rise in leadership within. You could never be a committee chair, for example. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that was my understanding, and so I had to pick one or the other. I talked to both sides, and but by the way, this isn't something new for me. I was independent as governor of Maine. I was elected as an independent in 1994, and I got to tell you, it's kind of a luxury. You don't have to worry about primaries. You can call them as you see them. You don't have to worry about offending this or that group in the party, whichever party you're talking about. And every now and then, I like I say, I feel like it's a luxury. My political ideology is I call them as I see them.
Well, a plurality of the country are independent. I just wish we had more independents, true independents in the United States Senate. I looked at your voting record recently on President Trump's watch, and I think that this will be enlightening for the audience. You voted for, you stop me if I get one wrong, you voted for the Laken Riley Act, true?
No, I voted against it.
Okay. Did you vote to move it forward, to bring it to the floor? Why am I confused?
Because I was hoping we could amend it and make it better, but when that didn't happen, I voted against it.
Okay. I think I've assembled those Trump appointments that you voted for, but if I'm wrong, you'll tell me. Collins for Veteran Affairs.
Yep.
Wright for Energy.
Yes. Correct.
Burgum for Interior.
Correct.
Duffy for Transportation.
Right.
Besant for Treasury.
Correct.
Ratcliffe for CIA.
Right.
And Rubio for State.
That's right.
Okay, so the point is Angus King is not a dedicated no vote to whomever Trump puts forth. And on the highest profile, Gabbard, Hegseth, you've not yet had a final vote on Kennedy, but I imagine it's no, no, and no.
Correct. That's correct. And my, as a former governor, I believe that the executive should have the power to appoint the people they want, the people that they are comfortable with and want to have around them, with two exceptions. The exceptions are grossly unqualified or hostile to the mission of the agency to which they've been appointed. And Hegseth and Gabbard, and I'm going to vote no on Kennedy today, I believe fit that profile. None of them have the slightest experience in running a significant sized organization. And all of them in one way or another, I believe, are as I say, hostile to the mission. I can go on and on about all three of them. I made a speech yesterday about Robert F. Kennedy. I mean, to appoint somebody as head of our biggest health agency, who has spent most of his adult life trashing vaccines, to me is egregious. There's just no, and also it hasn't got much attention. He's made some very threatening noises about the Food and Drug Administration, which keeps us safe. So I just felt he failed both of those tests, as did both Hegseth and Gabbard.
I just wanted to establish a predicate for the audience that Angus King has been willing in certain circumstances that we've identified to vote for nominees of this president. Take me now to the "Are there no red lines" speech. What went into it? What was your thinking? What was the catalyst to deliver it?
Well, I've thought a lot about the Constitution over the years, and in fact, made a number of presentations in Maine and elsewhere about how the Constitution works. I've thought a lot about it, read a lot of the Federalist Papers, and one of the fundamental premises of the Constitution is the division of power. The framers were, they just fought an 8-year war against the King of England. They were very focused on the danger of concentrated power. And so the structure of the Constitution itself was designed to deal with that issue. Why? Because human history tells us the saying is power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. In other words, concentrated power is just dangerous. You look throughout history, human nature, and the framers knew that. So they set up this herky-jerky, complicated system that divided power explicitly between the president and the Congress. By the way, most of the power was given to the Congress. And what's been going on here in the last 2 or 3 weeks is Congress basically abdicating the power that it has over the purse, over the organization of the government. I mean, Musk said yesterday or today he's going to destroy an agency. Well, damn it, those agencies were created by act of Congress, signed by the president, and they were funded by act of Congress, signed by the president. So to allow the executive, let alone some guy who, has no background in public service or government, that doesn't really understand how the government works, to allow somebody like that under the auspices of the president to basically say, we don't need the Department of Education anymore, we don't need the Consumer Finance Protection Board, or we don't need USAID, that's a fundamental violation of the Constitution. But I'm not saying that, Michael, because I'm, institutionally jealous, or this is sort of academic. This is a fundamental protection of our freedom. It is dangerous to our freedom to allow the President of the United States to take on unilateral, unitary power over the country. That is just, and that's why I made that speech. And basically, I said to the Republicans, "Don't you have any red lines here? Isn't there anything that I'm waiting for them to notice two things: one, that our liberty is in danger, and two, that their own power is evaporating, or not evaporating; it's being usurped before their very eyes."
You were channeling "Have you no decency, sir?"
I did, and that was a conscious. You picked that up. I was channeling Joseph N. Welch in the Army McCarthy hearing when it just galled me when Musk tweeted, this weekend we took AID to the chipper, and this is the richest man in the world, literally taking food out of the mouths of starving children. And there's some programs with AID that I don't agree with, that I think could be trimmed. But that's one of the problems, Michael, that's going on here, is the people that are doing this don't really know why those programs are there or what they do. And they're saying, oh, AID funded some project they don't like, DEI in Uganda or something. But they're also funding things like a water desalination plant in Jordan that's important to keeping the country of Jordan alive. And the harm to the country is going to be enormous. But to give that for Congress to just stand there, for my Republican colleagues to just sit on their hands and watch their basic power go away, I don't get it.
I understand what you're saying about USAID, and I went deep last Saturday on CNN with just one of those programs that Joni Ernst was bandying about, $20 million for Sesame Street in Iraq. And I thought to myself, well, that sounds rather wasteful. Why the hell would we be spending $20 million on? And then you delve into it and you find out, okay, there's a hand washing component to this show that they air. It's a means of trying to instill some Western thinking. As a radio caller of mine said, who would you rather have teaching kids in Iraq, Al Qaeda or Big Bird? It starts to make sense. But Senator, you lose the soundbite war, and you know that. I mean, you meaning Democrats, because they're very potent. William Proxmire made a whole career of those Golden Fleece Awards. And funny thing, I went back and I delved into one. He had one that won an award for screw worms and their sex patterns. Then there was another where the headline was that Proxmire thought it was wasteful to spend in real dollars today $300,000 to measure the buttocks of airline stewardesses in an era when we called them stewardesses. When you delved into it, you found that there had been this horrific airline crash. And as they were trying to make new airplanes crash worthy, they needed to know the dynamics of the cabin crew. Like, it all made sense, but it just took me 2 minutes to explain this to you. So I guess my question for Angus King is, what should be the approach from Democrats? I realize you're an independent, or opponents of the president on these programs, because you can't swing at every pitch. That's what I really want to ask.
Right. No, you can't. You've got to have some kind of a strategy. And as you know, the Democrats have been sort of struggling to find a strategy over the last 2 or 3 weeks. I think everybody is shocked at the magnitude and breadth and scope and scale of what's being done, and is being done so fast. So I think there are 2 or 3 steps. One is the courts. A great deal of what they're doing is just flat out illegal. Firing the IGs. The statute says you have to provide 30-day notice to Congress on the firing of an IG with a rationale for doing so. They didn't do that. I mean, that's just straight up illegal. And I believe that these, extinguishing an agency, a statutorily established agency, firing all the people, I believe that's a violation of statute, because those agencies were created by law. So litigation is one step, and I think that's one of the most important. Secondly, I think the Democrats have to be better at messaging about what's going on here, because I can tell you, at home, a lot of people are saying, "Hey, he's cutting government. That's great," and so there's a disconnect between the alarm here and what people are thinking back in Millinocket, Maine. But here's the problem. The people in Maine or in Iowa and everywhere else are going to find out pretty soon, when there's nobody there to answer the phone when they call to check on their VA appointment, or when their Social Security check is late, or when their tax refund is late, or when they go to the national parks and there aren't people there to look after them and take care of what they're doing. Let me just stop. I'm the co-chair of the National Park Subcommittee. They've frozen all seasonal hiring at national parks. Well, most national parks in the United States, half the staff are seasonals. So you're talking about suddenly cutting the staff in half at these places that are inundated with visitors, and people. It's going to really harm the experience. So what's happening? I think the impact is not being seen. It will be shortly. Now, my office has been deluged with calls about, we're supposed to get I'm a farmer. I'm supposed to get a grant to help me with my conservation work. Where does that stand? I mean, we're getting, for fire stations and police stations and all of those kinds of things. So it's starting to seep in, but this is a long way of saying, I think the message has to be more clear about what the impact is. We're not advocating for big government, but we're advocating for effective government. And so the real life anecdotes of what's going on, I think, is the second part of the strategy. The other is to try to stop some of these terrible nominees, or to stop some bad legislation, which we've been able to do. But, fundamentally, I mean, it's very frustrating, Michael. I get these irate emails and calls to my office. Tell Senator King to put a stop to this. Well, I don't have the votes, that's the problem. It's, they've got 53 votes, and so far they've pretty well maintained the linking of arms. I think they're going to regret a lot of these votes, to tell you the truth. I said that last night about Kennedy. I think they're going to come to be embarrassed. The other thing, Michael, about these nominations, and I said this about Kennedy, he wouldn't get 20 votes if it was a secret ballot.
I heard Schumer say that about Tulsi Gabbard, and I thought it rang true. Yeah, Senator, I want to be respectful of your time. I'm gonna hit you cold with a totally different issue before you leave me. And by the way, thank Angus King. I really appreciate you for being here. So I thank you for being here. Every day I have a poll question of the day on my website. Today has to do with the whole Russia-Putin situation. And what I'm essentially asking is, for there to be a peace deal that we can all live with, should Russia have to give it all back, meaning all the way back to 2014, including the annexation of Crimea? Gut reaction from Senator Angus King?
Gut reaction is Russia should substantially, and I'm going to dodge a little bit, diminish their incursions into Ukraine. I don't want to talk about particular properties, but Michael, there's a really important point here. Donald Trump made a call to Putin yesterday. Hegseth essentially surrendered in Europe with the statements he made. He gave away what should have been negotiated. Donald Trump talked to Putin. This is a repeat of what happened in Afghanistan. People talk about the disastrous leaving of Afghanistan. What they forget is that in February of 2020, Donald Trump essentially surrendered to the Taliban. He said, if you don't attack our troops, we will be out by May of 2021, all of our bases, all of our troops. And here's the key. Those negotiations between the Trump administration and the Taliban did not include the Afghan government. And so far, it appears that these negotiations that are beginning with Putin don't include the Ukrainian government. I think that's just unacceptable. They're the ones who are dying over there. It's their country. They should be at the table. They should be an essential part of the table. But
I agree. I completely agree.
What we've seen over the last 24 hours is not very encouraging.
When are you coming back?
Coming back?
Yeah, coming back
Washington.
To this program.
Oh, anytime, man. I set up in my condo with the state of Maine in the background. I'm ready.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Great to be with you. Enjoyed it, and we'll keep talking.
Thank you, sir. United States Senator Angus King from the great state of Maine, ladies and gentlemen.